What is up, profitable stylists? Here we go this week. We're talking about hair products and hair extensions. Does it make a difference? Does it matter? It's an interesting topic. A lot of people ask us questions about it all the time. So we figured we'd have a discussion about it. And here we are. Good morning, Bernard.
Doesn't matter. Goodbye.
Doesn't matter, huh?
It's, you know, that that's such a loaded question. Products and hair extensions. First of all, what are your hair extensions? These days, I think it's pretty common that most people have human hair for their extensions, but it's not 100%. There's still a lot of synthetic hair out there. And that's a topic we should talk about one day, is the difference between human and synthetic hair extensions, because I think that eventually we'll go back around to using more synthetic. There was a time when we used a lot of synthetic. Where you at, Eddie? You look a little preoccupied over there.
Technical issues on the back end behind the scenes to make things run smoothly.
So let's assume everybody's using human hair for now, because that's the majority of what we're using
for this discussion. Yeah, that's the only thing that's going to make sense.
Because eventually we might run out of human hair. The amount of people that want extensions compared to the amount of people giving human hair for extensions is not going to match up at some point. And that's why human hair is a little expensive. It's not made. It's a commodity. We only have a certain amount of it, and each year it's either up or down. But with that in mind, if you're going to use products on your own hair or hair extensions, does it matter what products you use on your own hair as a regular hairdresser in the salon? Why do we even recommend certain products? That's a good starting point. And then, how are hair extensions different than the average person's regular hair? That's a couple of the places I'd like to go. Do you want to set anything up before you start talking about it?
Because there's also different categories, not just of products, but of types of products as well. And what do I mean is there's moisture and hydrate and volume and repair and smooth, and there's different categories of it. But then you've got the leave-ins, you've got the oils, you've got the balms, the creams, the oils. There's different types of products in that regards as well too. And I think that's why there are such a variety of offering out there. That's where a lot of confusion comes through, because there's a lot of products that seem similar or seem like they do the same thing, that people start getting confused. And you see a lot of the people, when they start talking to each other and they're asking a friend for a recommendation, or they're asking somebody for a recommendation, I think the biggest misnomer that I see a lot is people will start naming off very specific brands. And it's like, that's not the answer. I don't agree that X brand is the answer. I think
the one and only. You can only
the one and only, right? Yeah, like you're alluding to, and what you're talking about. What type of hair do you have? What type of hair extension do you have? There is a specific product, or there is a variety of products for the specific type of hair that each individual person has. And I think that's what's going to make today's topic so cool. I think that's what's going to make it important.
Well, you know how sometimes if you use the wrong shampoo, your hair will catch on fire?
Yeah.
Never.
It's how I lost the front of my hairline.
Right. Right. So that's what I always like to think in extremes. What's going to happen? You've got those customers that are like, it's not true. I'm using shampoo from Walmart, and my hair's still on my head. So what happens when you use the wrong product is another topic, because it's not like black and white. It's not like it all falls out if you do it wrong, and it's all wonderful if you do it right. Because even if you use the right products, you could use them wrong. It's kind of like the extension.
This is true.
You can have a good hair extension product and do it wrong, or have a terrible client, and it doesn't matter. So same thing with products. But let's talk about a little bit about why extensions in general, overall, might need a little more attention to what products are being used. I don't think most people realize that, because there was a day, I remember, this is what you get to say when you're an old hairdresser, right?
Back in my day,
Back in my day, I do remember when 25, 30 years ago, because I've been doing hair I don't know, around 34 years. And I had those reps that would come in, and most hairdressers can't even imagine this now. The reps would come in and try to get us to want to do more color and highlights because we didn't do quite as many as are done today. And so they would say something like, when you look out across a crowd, every single woman, or at the time it was woman, and then it turned into man and woman, and then everybody, but every woman you see or every lady you see could benefit from some color, lighter, darker, gray coverage, highlights, lowlights. And they were trying to change your thinking, and then hair extensions started to come that way. But before almost every single person does, I can't look across a room and not see somebody with color or highlights now, right? So color and highlights have come a long way. Almost everybody gets them. Almost every stylist does it. You wouldn't think about becoming a stylist or a barber, even a barber. You wouldn't think about it. You're coloring beards now if you're a barber, and some hair. There's just hardly anybody or any room that doesn't have at least one or the majority of the people with some sort of color or highlights. Both of us color or have some color in our hair, and so that changes the products that are needed on our hair because it slightly alters. It's not virgin hair anymore. We don't have virgin hair on our head. So the product is altered by the amount of hair, the texture of the hair, the curl of the hair, how dry or not, how good or bad, and then how light you color your hair may be a little more harsh on the hair. So it might be a little drier. So you need a little more of something else in your hair to repair it, make it feel better, make it look better, make it perform differently or better, or be able to get a brush or a comb through it. So that's the start of it. And with hair extensions, we move into a realm where just about, there are some exceptions, but just about 100% of the hair is altered, double processed, because it's mostly dark. So it's almost all bleached and then colored. And so I'm talking about some generalities here because there are some nuanced differences between high-end companies and low-end companies. But for the most part, that hair is bleached up some and then colored. And so the darker colors are bleached up less and colored, so they're a little healthier. And the lighter colors are bleached up much more because most hair is starting off dark, right? And so it's bleached up a lot and then toned. So you've got that is like a starting point for me. It's already processed, double processed hair, which needs a little more care. And then I'm really going to default to you then as far as what products, why, protein, moisture, all of these things. Even the sulfates I didn't understand quite as well. And that's about the biggest rumor out there, right? Sulfate-free product.
It's the most confusing conversation to have. And everything nowadays pretty much being sulfate-free, it's still confusing to a lot of people. They still don't understand it.
Right.
One of the interesting things that I had learned is when they process hair extensions, when they get the hair and they're going to process it, some companies, they have to make a decision. They either remove the cuticle or they keep it intact. And I thought that was very fascinating, because if you remove the cuticle, it makes it easier to process the hair extensions to the final product for us, the stylist, to put it into the client's hair.
Right.
But they have to overcompensate by putting some kind of a coating to replace the cuticle that they removed. That's the outer layer of that hair. It's what protects everything. It's like the skin on your body. You got to protect everything else.
Brittany said hi in the chat.
Just Brittany, good morning.
So that's a good point that you bring up.
Because if that coating wears off, it's not as repairable as a natural cuticle would be.
Right. And most hair extension companies use hair. So I just learned a new thing talking to a lady in another country who processes hair, trying to get me to buy their hair, and I always entertain the conversations. It's pretty educational. And she was talking about what quality hair do you want? You always say, oh, the best, but what is the best? So there's always been some of the things I talked about, and I'm starting to learn a deeper knowledge about it, is the quality of hair starts off with first of all, is it human or synthetic? But then second, the origin of the hair. And when I say origin, what ethnicity did it come from? Yeah. And what ethnicity is it going on? because everybody, just to give an example, American Indian, I remember in school, there were these two girls. They didn't look Indian at all to me, but they were like, we are Indian. And then joking around, I was like, do you go to powwows? And they're like, we do. I'm like, they were sisters. I said, you do? And I was like, is there fire involved? And they're like, yes, Bernard, a lot like the movies. I was like, I want to go so bad. You dance around the fire? And they said, we do. I was like, this is sounding exciting. So knowing that they were American Indian, and the owner of the school said their hair, one of them wanted a perm. And he said, the American Indian has the most cuticle layer of any ethnicity we know of on the planet. Their hair usually doesn't perm because the solution just can't get through those levels.
They can't penetrate. Okay.
And I thought, that's silly. Hair is hair, right? And do you know we could not perm these girls' hair? We could not perm it. I mean, we left that perm solution on longer than you're supposed to. We did it more than once, and it would not curl. I don't know if it wasn't penetrating, if it just wasn't reacting. I don't really know the science behind it, but he said cuticle layer. We took it as a challenge, and it never happened. So that was like my first experience in, wow, hair is not just hair. There are different kinds of hair. And then when we start buying extensions, we hear, where does the hair come from? Now, that's a whole nother video too, because even with me talking to this lady, she said most manufacturers lie. There's no such thing as Brazilian hair. There's no such thing as, and she started naming all the companies that, and names that people use just to make their hair sound fancy. But for the most part, hair is coming from from China, India, and then somewhere between Europe and Russia, in the Russian areas. And because the Osage hair comes from the Caucasus Mountains in Georgia, not the Georgia in our country, but and so from knowing that hair comes from different regions of the world and dealing with a little bit of it, you get to understand a little bit about origin of hair. But then she started talking to me about, do you want cutically aligned hair, machine cutically aligned hair, or ponytail? And I was like, wait, speak to me again. So I found out that some companies who say their hair's got all their cuticle going in the same direction is not bought in a ponytail, because that's the highest form of high quality hairs, when the hair's in a ponytail and all the cuticles going in one direction, and you have to pay special attention to keep it in that ponytail all the way through processing, which becomes an arduous process or project. Makes it more expensive. But she said that you can buy loose hair that's not all aligned, and they have a machine that aligns it and turns it around, but it's never 100%. And so that's how they can tell that it was cutically aligned hair by a machine. And I thought, I don't even know if this is true, but it's very fascinating. I want to see this machine. And she said she had never seen the machine either, because she doesn't work in that department. But she said some of the hair is cutically aligned by machine, and then some is not at all. Hair is just cuticle in both directions. And that's kind of what you were talking about, is when cuticle goes in both directions and it wants to lock together and tangle. That's when it's more important that they try to do something to make it not tangle, and they give it acid baths and strip the cuticle off the hair so that it is flatter and smoother. But what do we give up when we give up cuticle? A few things. You want to name some of the things we lose when we lose cuticle?
Yeah, you're losing shine. You're losing the ability for light to bounce off the surface and reflect. That's what we mean by shine, or even sheen throughout the hair. The other thing you're losing is elasticity. The ability. Well, it becomes much more difficult to detangle that hair. You have to put far more care into smoothing out that hair,
because it doesn't stretch.
Because it doesn't stretch as easily or as much. And also because with friction, as the hairs through the length of your hair are going to rub against each other, that's going to cause friction. And if that cuticle doesn't exist, it's going to expand. That section, that area of the hair is going to expand. And that's what's going to start getting knotty, tangly, all dreaded, all the word matting we talk about.
Holds the color in better.
And then the color is going to tend to fade quicker. It's not going to hold as much. It's not going to be as rich or Yeah, or as shiny. That color is not going to be as shiny as well. It's going to look more dull, more flat.
So it fades faster also.
And it's going to fade faster. And that surface abrasion, now when it comes down to the care, a lot of things are like, oh, we need sulfate free. Well, a sulfate in its rawest form is a type of detergent used to cleanse a surface area.
Yeah.
And when you're using heavier sulfates, then that abrasion, that erosion that's going to happen across the surface is going to be far more aggressive. Okay. So that's why they always say sulfate free. Well, anytime you say sulfate free, you're just substituting the prime ingredient, sulfate in this case, for something else, a substitute, which is generally speaking sarcosinate. It's supposed to be more gentle. It's supposed to mimic the same cleansing action of a sulfate, but in a more gentle form. So anytime you hear sulfate free, doesn't mean that's it. It doesn't exist. There is something else in there doing the thing.
Which I guess in some cases could be worse than sulfate.
In a lot, unfortunately, with the best intentions in mind, usually it's far worse. So it's the same thing.
Usually, huh?
I give this example, like you're a coffee drinker, so you'll understand this. You take sugar in your coffee. Well, if you take sugar, then you get fat. Well, if you take whatever that substitute sugar is, you get cancer. So it's like, pick your poison. Which would you rather do?
I use honey from my own
and you use honey, which is a natural. So now you're foregoing the sugar problem, and you're substituting that sweetness with something else entirely.
Still makes you fat, but it's just a little healthier fat.
And there you go. Do you make those cheeks pinchable? It's like,
oh,
so but this
I
is
said something about losing weight recently. My wife said it's all that honey.
It's all the honey. So now what we have discovered. So now we've had sulfate free for over 10 years now. It's been over a decade we've had sulfate free, but we're still not seeing improvements into the hair. So what happens is they're starting to bring back sulfates in minor degrees, especially in clarifying shampoos. They never truly went away, but they've been improved. The thing what we have discovered is, in addition to sulfate free, you want sodium chloride free, which is another ingredient in the many ingredients that exist in shampoos specifically, especially. And that is a dehydrant. Otherwise, it would take you forever to rinse your shampoo out. You'd never be able to get it out, So the easiest way I explain it to a client is, if there is a product out there that is safe enough to use in the maintenance of a keratin smoothing treatment, then it would be safe enough to use in the care of hair extensions, because a sodium chloride free and a sulfate free shampoo is what you need to maintain a keratin smoothing treatment. So with hair extensions, they go hand in hand. And for explaining shampoos and conditioners, that is the easiest way. Outside of that, now it becomes, what does your hair require? Is it lacking moisture? Is it lacking volume? Is it unruly? You need smoothness. What else is there? Hydrate, moisture, volume, smooth, and repair and restore. Is it lacking some kind of vitamins?
Vitamins.
That's what I was going to say. Caught myself. Or is it missing some kind of condition? Is it missing some kind of health, something that it requires some kind of repair, restore and that's where we got to discover, like you mentioned earlier, what type of hair is it going into? What type of hair is the hair extensions, and what type of hair is those hair extensions going on to? Because then recommending the proper category is really what's going to maximize the benefit in the maintenance care of those hair extensions and the natural hair too.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And I was never quite the brainiac on the ingredients of all the products. So I lean less on telling people exactly what to use. I do kind of trust a few name brands. And I figure, if you've got a name brand that's saying we're only selling in the salon and not in a grocery store, it's most likely a good start, because if it's cheaper and it's in a drugstore, it's not 100% of the time worse, but most likely, I remember when I was in school, just pH balance was
Mm,
a big thing.
that was
And
huge.
yeah, and I remember that the owner of our school got banned from a local drugstore because he went in and he was opening bottles of shampoo on the as a research project. He was sticking a probe in there to check the pH level, and he had his paper towels. And
That's awesome.
I mean, I thought, well, how did you not think you were going to get kicked out? Maybe you buy them all and then test them. But he was testing, and within the same brand, it was, yeah, you shouldn't be opening other people's products. Guys, you know, when you've lived a while, you get to experience some crazy things. And that was, you see, you know, the little seal over the top of your orange juice, your pill bottles. They didn't have all that when I was a kid.
Those were created because of your owner of your beauty school.
People like that. That's right. So there was somebody who poisoned a bunch of Tylenol bottles back in the day.
Oh, that's terrible.
Put some sort of bad stuff in Tylenol. A few people had bad experiences, and then I remember that one specifically. And so they had to recall all the Tylenol, put seals on the bottle. If the seal is broken, don't use. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's kind of where it started, where everybody started sealing everything that mattered. And I don't think things that just go on your hair like shampoo are as invasive, so they don't seal most of those bottles. So you probably still could go test the bottles in Walmart.
People of Walmart, unite.
Let's test all the product. But he was, it was interesting because he said from brand to brand, obviously the pH level was different, but in the same brand product, the shampoos were inconsistent in their pH level from bottle to bottle. And that was the thing that he really taught us in the early days was, look, back at the school, we test all the, God, I forget what brand we had back then, but he would put the probe in there and all the bottles were in that range that it was supposed to be and all very consistent. So that right there let me know, like, oh, wow, okay, so it's not 100% of the time, but professional brands that sell to salons only spend a little more time to be a better product. You know, they're trying to get the right ingredients, the right pH level, and they're trying to be way more consistent. And then we were a pretty strong Paul Mitchell salon for a long time. So I didn't feel like I needed to push like exactly what brand, because it was all Paul Mitchell and it was supposed to be within that brand. You could find all the things you just mentioned.
You
Then
can
later,
find everything.
yeah. Then later when you start to carry like Bailage and Bain de Terre and Redken and Wella, then you start thinking, oh man, is one professional brand better than another? That starts you a big argument, you know?
So, and this is why I say that this is some of the misnomer that I see a lot is when people go on these forums or when they're talking to each other, oh, you got to use this, or you got to use that, or you got to use that.
Yeah.
It's not the brand. It's
you
it's
sell
the,
a brand.
I sell a brand because my brand is better than your brand.
I don't sell a brand. Your brand is better. What is your brand? What do you guys sell?
I mean, look, I represent the all nutrient product line and I represent the Keratherapy product line as far as retail goes. Okay.
Which one's better?
They're two. Well, no, see, that's a great question because I get asked that question a lot.
Yeah, I bet.
They're actually two separate categories.
Better for extensions.
They're both equally good for hair extensions. All nutrient is taking a more organic approach. Keratherapy is taking more of a chemical approach. Keratherapy is really good for keratin smoothing treatment products. For keratin smoothing services. So their products are designed to reinforce and maintain keratin smoothing. All nutrient is a certified organic based color line. So their retail is designed to maintain the healthiness and longevity of hair color. With both of them in place for what they individually represent and do, they equally benefit the maintenance of hair extensions, whether it's the Onstage, or any other brand.
Yeah, and that was my point, that professional brands, you can almost always find what you need within a professional brand for your hair extensions.
They do it correct, 100% correct. Because within each of those two brands, for example, they each have the categories which matter for each individual type of hair, whether it's moisture, volume, smooth, repair, restore, or hydrate. So with shampoos and conditioners, that's really what it comes down to is that's what you got to look. Texture, density, and porosity. What does your client have? And what is the measure of that client's texture, density, and porosity? And that's going to help you narrow down specifically what type of category of shampoo and conditioner you should recommend. Now, when they get out the shower, inevitably, a lot of people like to use some kind of a detangling spray or some kind of a leave-in or some kind of a layer. They like to start preparing their hair before they put the whatever product they're going to put in their hair. So those leave-ins have a whole nother category onto themselves. Like you mentioned earlier, there are leave-ins that are designed to be pH balancing. There are leave-ins that are designed to be color protect, UV protect.
Mhm.
There are color protect as well too, but UV protect is what I meant to say. There are ones that are designed to be heavier conditioners to layer upon the conditioner you just rinsed out from the shower, a heavier leave-in conditioner, almost like a pre-treatment, like a pre-deep conditioner treatment.
Right.
So there are different subcategories of the leave-in sprays and balms that we put into our hair, because those are supposed to prep the hair to be brushed. And then the type of brush that you use completely matters.
Does it
Oh,
matter?
look at you.
What does it matter? Which one I use?
100% it matters. Yes, that's why we have so many brushes.
Yeah. So some of my, since when we're talking about hair extensions, I grabbed that Paul Mitchell was big down south. I know it wasn't as big in you guys' area. So when I was a newer hairdresser, this was these are two of their most popular brushes.
Okay.
And I think looks like I'm missing a bristle there, huh? No, it just look. Yep, I'm missing a bristle. These are older. These are well-used brushes, but this has been my most favorite brush for most hair most of the time. But these are not great for hair extensions.
Why? But we have to explain why they're not great.
Tell me, yeah. Go for it.
Oh, okay.
You're a brush expert.
No, I fancy myself an expert of a lot of things, apparently. I'm just a nerd. I'm just a nerd that enjoys the science of this stuff.
Yeah. So talk about why that is different than maybe this.
Yeah, a proper hair extension brush. So as you can see, the first paddle brush and hand brush that you put up, they're just a one-tier pin brush. Now, if your hair is natural, you have no hair extensions, that is completely fine. There's nothing wrong with that because there is no resistance going through. What resistance I mean is when you attach a hair extension, especially an individual strand, whether it's a keratin, whether it's a bead, whether it's a knot-in, whatever type it is, that single tier brush is going to snag. There is nothing to help guide it across that speed bump, that surface of where the hair extension is attached to. So the second set of brushes that you were showing, some were boar bristle. I think they were all boar bristle. Yeah,
they were
two-tier brushes, meaning there is a shorter row of brush, and then there is a longer row of brush. And so
Bristle.
where bristles, yeah. So the shorter bristles, the darker ones in those specific brushes are boar hair, which is thicker and heavier than a human's cuticle. So what that is designed to do is to take any surface debris or buildup and remove it and run it down the length of the rest of the hair. But then you also have natural oils that exist on your scalp. So it is also designed to grab those natural oils and run it down the length of the hair shaft. So that would help lubricate it a little bit naturally. The longer pins, the longer bristles on there are some form of a heavy nylon or a heavy plastic. And then one has, and then they got the ball tips on there too. The ball tip is,
yeah. The she hair brush doesn't have the ball tip, and then
the she hair brush does not have the ball tip.
Yeah.
The ball tip is just for sensitive scalps, so you don't dig in so hard, so it doesn't hurt so hard when you hit your head.
Right.
But those longer pins, those longer bristles are designed to catch where the hair extension is attached to the hair and separate the bonds or separate the strands from each other. So then this way, the shorter bristles can allow to grab the debris more gently and run it through and not get trapped or snagged onto where the attachment area is. So that's the reason why two-tier brushes exist and why those do matter. There is also loop style hair extension brushes that are made for a specific type of beaded hair extensions, which we didn't talk about, but
Go for it.
that doesn't, well, so instead of it
It
being
was
a
the
bristle,
original. It was the original type of hair extension brush. Probably
yeah,
this will probably cover that. This is a little smaller one to kind of keep in the purse. Also,
exactly,
we sell a little set, so there's no difference between this and the bigger one. Just a little more daily maintenance throughout the day, and not have
and
to
easier
carry.
to travel with,
Yeah, easier to travel with.
Do you guys
Talk
want to
about
add
that.
anything about the brushes, or is that, did I cover it?
Well, talk about the loop brush a little bit. I don't have one here. I think most people know it's where that bristle went back around. Expected it not to catch in anything, and it was a great brush for many, many years. But we just found it didn't detangle quite as well as a brush like this. And so we've kind of really gotten away from the loop brush. And the, Sally's, beauty supply, drugstores, all your beauty supplies tend to still carry the loop brush because that's what most people still think, because news doesn't travel as fast as we'd like it to. It's not the best brush for hair extensions anymore, but it's not
Do you
terrible.
think it's because hair extensions have gotten smaller?
Hmm.
Do you think when the original extensions were wider and longer and
Big,
fatter in the hair,
chunky. Maybe
right?
so. Yeah. And the loop brush, I think, came along more for the individual type strands, since you're bringing that up. I don't think when people had the weft, because wefts have been around forever, whether they were sewn in or used beads or some kind of cable or braid along the scalp and tied in. It wasn't as necessary to use a loop brush for that, or any special brush. I mean, a boar bristle brush was better than what would you call this? What's the generic term for this style of?
I don't know, just a paddle brush.
When
A
they had the
classic paddle,
holes,
I don't
this
know.
is a paddle brush, yeah. But when they had the holes in the back, they call it a vent brush. It was always still a hard bristle brush. And of course, the balls were important until they wear off, because that's kind of soft on the scalp. But we've got brushes around the salon where those little balls have fallen off, and the hairdresser's still using the brush. And I'm thinking, throw it away. It's damaged. It's gonna hurt
When you
somebody
get
now.
used to it, that becomes, it's like it's imprinted in part of your hand. It becomes
I
an
know.
extension of the arm.
Right. Yeah. So the loop brush, although it'll still detangle okay, it's just not as good as, like you're saying. I never did call it a two-tier brush, but I like that. It's almost like two brushes in one, where it's got the longer bristle and the shorter bristle. It definitely does its job better because of the two bristles. I just never called it a two-tier brush. I like that. It's almost like thinking about, you almost do need both of those, whether you use one brush with a longer soft bristle or firmer bristle and another. But in this case, you got them both in the same brush. And I like that these are both from two different companies, two different parts of the world, and they still have a similar concept, because it does, where's the camera? It does make a difference. Having those two different bristle lengths makes a difference. And so it's kind of confirmation when two different companies are kind of doing the same thing. Maybe one copied off the other. I don't really know, but I don't even think they know each other. I think they just happened. And we sell both products, the She Hair Keratin Bond, as well as the on-stage beaded individual strand and the beaded weft. And we sell these brushes because they do detangle really well. Now, sometimes you don't have that brush near you, and you grab something like this and you go to try to brush, and the customer wonders, now, why are you using that? Because technically, mid-strand to end or just under the extension, you can brush hair with this. You can style with a round brush if you're out on the ends. I think we should kind of cover that. This we sell them in a set because some people want this in their purse. This brush is designed more, you talked about it, but I want to say more specifically for everything going on near the scalp. Right now, yes, this will brush all the way through. Like you said, I love the word you used, debris. I think of leaves and pine needles, That
was the original thing, Bernard. 100 strokes a night. I love my expressions. 100 strokes a night.
Yep.
You would brush through your hair because they were all farmers back then, in the dirt and the leaves and the sticks and stuff.
And they really didn't shampoo their hair as often. So they really were pulling the natural scalp oils from the scalp down with a more natural bristle, which before plastics, natural bristles was the only option, actually. So
they used to use bone and until they figured out boar hair, like animal hair.
Right. Right. So just a bone comb at one point, Tom and Jerry, I think they used the fish bones in Tom and Jerry. And then when we went to boar bristles and other synthetic type bristles, it was to take the leaves and debris, like you said, the trash right out of the hair, but it was also to move the scalp oil through the hair to
Yeah.
evenly distribute. So it was more than just detangling, it was cleaning also, like you said, so cleaning and detangling the hair. And then as we moved into the extension world, we kind of had to add a different bristle in there to do more. And it was to firmly get close to the head. And the extensions are put in, and right next to that scalp, let's see if we could talk about this. One extension strand, or even wefts, they're attached to a grouping of hair, no matter how or where. And the person is shedding hair. And I don't think enough people talk about that near the scalp shedding. If we're attached to a section of hairs, and this little hair says, I want to leave today, they want to shed, they just do that. They can't go anywhere because we attach to it. We're hanging from it, hoping that the root stays strong. And it says, goodbye, I'm going on vacation. And then this hair does the same thing. And so some of the hairs detach. Those are the hairs next to the other ones that want to tie up together. And that's what we're talking about right near the scalp, where the shed hairs just kind of, a few of them fall and start to dance or something. I don't know. I think they're trying to create new hairs or something, they're getting together and having a relationship. And we're saying no, because that's where tangling, knotting, and matting happens right near the scalp. And that firmer bristle gets deeper in there and separates them, pushes them apart. So they tangle with each other on your own strand. Don't do it together, because then 2 and 3 and 4 start to all pull together. Yeah. And that's when people end up with knots. And too many people will brush just up over the surface, and they're a little too gentle, and they really need to pick up half their hair or more and brush near the scalp here, let down a little more, near the scalp here, or just be a little firmer and get near the scalp from the top to the bottom, or at least where the extensions are attached. Some people will run their fingers through their hair, and that helps too. And make sure you can get fingers between all of the extensions if you're doing strands. Wefts, just don't let 2 rows of wefts end up getting tangled together. Separate them and brush kind of sort of firmly against the scalp to detangle the matting that might be happening near the scalp. I think that's the only thing we didn't cover with the brushes, is it might be more important than the shampoo, conditioner, and styling products.
The brush is very key. Brushing, I preach that constantly all the time. Brushing is the number one thing. To me, a brush and some kind of a serum of some sort are my 2 things.
Yeah.
And I think oils and serums, a lot of people get confused as well, because there's 4 types of that category. You've got essential fatty acid base and mineral base. Those are more treatment oils and serums. You've got silicone or alcohol based oils and serums. Those are more for styling. Now, I'm not saying any brands, because universally across the board, every brand does it slightly different, but that's the categories. For styling purposes, those should only be left from mid shaft to ends. They shouldn't be put above. That's where it starts getting into the attachment area of the extension. And that's where it starts drying out and clumping everything together. When you have treatment oils, yeah, you can run those through the mid shaft, through the ends equally as much as you could put them by your scalp, but it's not going to help, with the blow drying as much or with the styling as much to keep the ends collected together. The reason why it matters is because you need elasticity in your skin, in your scalp. If your skin is very tight, when you go to brush, it's going to hurt because it ain't pulling, right? So there's no give. And if there's no give, it's going to hurt. You're not going to press as hard. You're not going to separate as much. You're not going to allow the brush to do the action that it needs to do. That hair is going to clump up together. Knotting and matting is the worst case scenario. And when I teach a class, I always tell people, what's the worst thing that can happen to hair? And they say, oh, breakage. I say, actually, what is worse than breakage? And everybody looks like there's nothing worse than breakage.
It's gone.
I said, wrong. The hair doesn't break. They do the dance like you were saying, and then they start getting matted up. And that's my little joke. If instead of sending people to jail, they punish them by making them brush out tangled hair, nobody would commit a crime ever again. Nobody ever You got to work in a kid snip and brush out little kids screaming as you're trying to detangle their hair. Nobody would
Try
ever
not to
commit a
hurt them.
crime.
Right. Yeah. That's funny. Right. So detangling hair is an art of its own because so many people don't do a good job of it. And I would say anybody that does hair extensions has experienced different levels of tangling, all the way up to the level of you're not getting this knot. You're not getting this knot out. And so then what do? And I think that could be a whole nother topic of just detangling and getting knots, because I think I talked about it in one of the last two guys' chats that if my dogs get a mat, there's a dematting comb. It's basically razor blades, you know. Is that okay for the hair? We'll save that for later. But I want to make sure we finish everything about hair extensions. Let's just kind of recap. We talked
there's
about.
two more things I want your
Go ahead.
opinion on.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So mousses, hairsprays.
You did prepare for this, you liar.
I did. I like messing with you back. You know?
Okay. So there's what?
Mousses, gels, hairsprays, smoothing balms, curling products, creams, any kind of styling aids and finishing products.
Yep.
Those are just to make it look pretty. That's more cosmetic. It doesn't do anything to the actual condition of the hair other than dry it out a little bit. And in this case, that damage that's done from finishing products is offset by the nurturing effect of the leave-ins, the shampoos, the conditioners, and the oils that we were just, and the brushing that we were talking about. So they kind of balance each other out. Okay. The other product that nobody talks about enough is heat.
Oh yeah. That's a good point. I've got a new girl working for us and she's a new stylist. And I think people just assume, oh, you went to school, so you know everything. And she comes in and I kind of hope she's not watching this video right now because
hey, it's a learning experience. Okay.
It is
part of your training.
She's new. It is part of her training. She's new. She is talented. She's doing great hair. She's dressing pretty. She got the nice shoes on, makeup's done, the lashes, but then her hair hadn't been done in days. It's just looking a little frizzy. And I thought, I don't know how to tell her. This is a salon. We've got to be doing our own hair also to some degree. And so I took a chance a couple of days ago and I said, hey, you got to do your hair. She goes, it's damaged. I said, well, I know all you new hairdressers damage your hair in school. It's part of the initiation and learning process. It seems like we test on ourselves, you know, more girls than guys, but guys too these days. But it's like every girl that starts school with hair down to her waist ends up with it cut up to here or chemically removed up to.
I went through it.
Yeah, because we want it. You know, you're like, ooh, new idea. Who's gonna let me do it? Nobody. I'll do it. And so she's been through that and she's got these big blonde chunks on the front and they're way shorter than the rest of her hair because they're slowly getting chemically removed. And I said, you've got to style your hair. And she said, I can't. I said, what do you mean you can't? She said, it's falling out. It's damaged. I don't want to get rid of it. I think I'm burning it off. And I said, I think that's exactly what's happening. So I grabbed our number one stylist and I said, talk to her. She said she can't style her hair. And she goes, what do you mean you can't style your hair? And I said, now listen, if a client came in with your hair and said, will you style my hair? What would you do? Do you just tell her, sorry, sorry, you're past the point of styling? I said, well, then why don't we just shave your head? She's like, no. Well, if you're just never going to style it anymore, we need to get rid of it because I think you could pull that off better. And I said, what would you do with a client? And then she's like, I don't know. I think I'm burning it off. I said, did you think that temperature might matter? You can lower the burn, you know?
Now you're talking crazy talk. What are you talking about? You want to lower the temperature.
What? How am I going to lower? Yeah. Oh, that's what the little dials for, the little minus buttons for. Yeah, maybe you. And so then it was a revelation for her when Shelby said, what temperature are you using? And she said, and she goes, oh, no, girl. And then this was the revelation. Blonde chunk here, brown hair behind it, different temperature on each color. What? I can change the temperature for different hair on the same head?
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Right. It doesn't take long to change, but yeah, most of her hair is brown. So use the higher temperature for the rest of that brown hair and then lower it, or start low, get the bangs done, and then raise it for the rest of the hair. It's one change. It's not like there are highlights here and there where you're trying to do little strips of different colors. For her, it's just a big chunk of blonde and then all brown. And it's the blonde that is suffering from the temperature she's using that's probably more for the brown.
But Bernard, I heard heat is so bad. You should just let it air dry. You should just leave it natural and let it air dry.
We get that too. We get that too. I'm trying to go natural. Yeah, I can do it here, right? Because I'm not talking about anybody specific, but I've had the people that say, trying to not use heat anymore. I'm just trying to do the natural look. Well, natural doesn't, it's such a pretty word, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean pretty. Natural does not.
Natural don't mean pretty at all. No,
usually,
there ain't nothing pretty about natural.
Not usually. Some natural curl. Some people, it's rare that somebody has a hairstyle that, you know, I want that cut that I can just wash and go. Well, that was in the 80s.
That's a shaved head.
Yeah. And of course, this is all opinion. Yeah, some of you guys look great with your natural, just wash and go hair. But even then, most of those people use a particular product. Curly head girls, my wife, if she's going to wash and go curly, she's not just going to go. She's going to use some kind of product to help define and control those curls. Because if she does just go, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's going to be a big frizzy, fuzzy mess. In her opinion, I like that big frizzy, fuzzy mess, but most people don't. So most wash and go does not exist. Some sort of product, some sort of styling. And then I think when you brought up the heat, that was just a whole nother can of worms to open up. That's why most of our professional tools these days have settings, heat control
have
on
settings
them, right?
and temperature gauges on them, you know.
So what heat should we be using, Eddie? Tell us. Mine goes up
okay,
over
so
400 degrees. What can I use that on?
Oh, so you're talking about a flat iron now. You're talking about,
flat iron. What's the highest temperature a flat iron goes? Is it 425, 450 on some?
No, there are there's 450 is standard, right? But there's a lot of flat irons nowadays that are going up to like 480, 500 degrees.
I need to know those because that's the ones I want.
Those are the ones you want, right?
To cook my eggs and bacon.
Seriously, I don't understand
What temperature does hair burn at? Healthy hair.
God, I just did this beauty quiz.
Well, what temperature are you recommending people use their irons at?
So, okay, I got to remember, was it 451? I think 451 hair burns at 400 Fahrenheit. But anyways, the natural heat resistance, like the natural threshold of the cuticle for heat resistance is 392 degrees. So if you really pay attention to your flat irons, some of them won't have a 400. They'll have like a 410 setting, a 392 and a 410 setting. And you kind of get like in between to get to 400, you know? But 392 is such a specifically odd number that everybody just says 400 just because they just round up. If you've got thin, fine, soft, baby, delicate, whatever soft language you want to use, less than 400 degrees. You should be somewhere between 350 to 400. Okay. Yeah. If you've got compromised, damage, that blonde, like you were talking about, same scenario. You want to use a lower temperature.
That interview.
The speed at which you use a flat iron to run it through that.
350 is what Shelby told her. Girl, you should not be going over 350 for that blonde hair.
Well, if her hair is that far gone and damaged, if it's
maybe
that delicate.
Maybe less.
Yeah.
She might have said 300 actually. But anyway, I just remember hearing the 3 number.
Not every flat iron can go to 300. There's only a few brands that can go that low.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So 350 is pretty common for most companies, for most brands. What I was going to say, I just lost my thought. Oh, the passes, the number of passes that you do through the hair matter as well too.
Right.
Because I see so many people, they'll crank that sucker up to like 450 degrees and like, I just go really fast. I just go really, really, really fast.
That does make a difference. If you take a thicker section and you don't leave it in the spot as long, there is less chance you're going to burn, but that's not necessarily safe.
That's a whole nother thing in itself, man. Do you ever press a shirt? Yeah, I've seen you press a shirt before, actually.
Yeah, I love to iron.
Yes. It's the best analogy I can give. Unfortunately, not a lot of people do it anymore.
Right.
But when you got a wrinkled shirt, and if you take a steamer or if you take an iron, especially the iron on the board, and you're pressing that out, the speed, the temperature, the amount of moisture that you pre-spray into the fabric,
the pressure,
and the pressure, all of that matters. And it's a greatest way to teach somebody how to flat iron and press hair out properly. 400, over 400 to like 410, that's when you start getting thicker, coarser hair. Okay. Or your hair is darker colored. Then you need that extra heat. Hair extensions should be about 350 to 400, in my opinion.
Yeah. In most cases, hair extensions a little higher quality hair. It's going to be a little thicker hair. It can take a little bit more heat. But even then, the hair closest to the scalp is going to be a little newer hair. It can take a little more heat. And so when you get to the ends, so that's when, if you're using the right temperature for the majority of the hair, how hard you press, how strong you pull, the tension and the pressure can drive, the pressure can drive more heat, the speed can drive more heat into the section, depending on how thick the section is you pulled, or less. And so for me, more heat at the top, more pressure, more tension. And then as you go down, you can speed up a little, lower your pressure, hold that hair in that position of straight while it cools off. And that's a styling class. That's
a whole styling class in of itself.
And I enjoy that, but I think we're going to leave it there for extensions. Yeah. You said you had two more. Did we cover both of your subjects?
Those were the things, the finishing products and heat. I really wanted to bring that up because not enough people talk about the blow dryer settings. There is a medium, there is a low, there is a medium heat. I'm talking about airflow, but then there's also a medium and low heat setting.
Right.
The only thing I won't agree on is a curling iron. Curling iron goes to 10. There's no other reason to use anything lower than 10 on a curling iron.
What does that?
You crank that sucker up, you wrap the hair in there, and you start touching your hand. When your hand burns, that's when the curl's done.
See, that's how I feel about a flat iron. Set it as hot as it can possibly go. That's where we disagree. You think you can do it with a curling iron and it's okay. I think you can do it with a flat iron a lot safer, because I feel like I'm tied in a big knot in a curling iron. It's all wrapped around there, and if that hair starts to smoke or fall out, I can't get it off the iron fast enough.
If it ain't burning, it ain't working.
The flat iron, I can be like, whoa, that was too hot. That section fell out. Let's go a little faster on the next one. Let's end it there. Thank you guys for watching.
We'll catch y'all next week.
Products do matter.